Hey everyone, Walter Bowne here. Just to give you some tips. I've been teaching like 21 years. And with COVID and remote learning, there's a lot of things we can do. And let me show you what some of the stuff my students have done. Number one, students sitting in rows taking notes and listening to a teacher or professor is outdated. Students need skills more than ever, as the saying goes. That will make them creative and dynamic citizens and innovators in the workplace. If you need to watch students like a hawk, to use a cliche, to catch for cheating, your assessment is not performance-based. So as an English teacher, I never give an assessment that could be cheated. So a Scantron, no. It's an essay. It's some sort of other types of things, right? And let me show you like something, for instance, here, there was an analysis of Edith Wharton's Roman fever. So they each had to come to the class with a minute worth of analysis. I recorded it, put it together, and now it has over 1,300 likes.
Because most of the story is them talking about their two daughters, and both of their daughters are the same age. And also, towards the end of the story, we find out that both of the women were in love with Del.
So rather than me, I had a student volunteer, Julia, at this point, she's graduating this year, and she read Story of an Hour, which only takes 6 minutes. That's why a lot of teachers use it, because it's easily digestible especially within a class time. But you have someone read it, record it, which takes 6 minutes.
Who told her in broken sentences, veiled hints that revealed.
Then you have students do like the 1 minute professor. There's all different ways you can go about this. And then I have my analysis of Story of an Hour, which is me talking about all the different complexities of this story. And on this course, it's 10 minutes. This has 10,000 views. So what's really cool as a teacher is that you're not just reaching the students in your class, or hopefully reaching the students of your class, that if you post things like on YouTube, you can now have a global audience. Number two, even remotely, students with access to technology, and this is very, very important, but with access, can produce high-quality projects that showcase skills in speaking, analysis, synthesis, organization, composition, and more. All right, here's another example of a student. This was during COVID, Julia, and she loves this book, so I wanted them to record and with speaking, to work on their speaking skills, because we're not in class. I can't do public speaking, but they can still do public speaking. They can still speak. And for a lot of kids who are shy or introverted, this is a fantastic experience. So they don't have that dread of 30 eyeballs or 60 eyeballs looking at them.
So much food that a little fly could not eat herself. But, she's...
And what I liked about this project is after they read, some read and then did some analysis. Others did analysis, like read, and then would address the audience like you would do a child. Like, what do you think about this? And, what's the lesson here? So you can use children's stories for analysis. It doesn't always have to be something weighty like, say, Scarlet Letter, because this story here, The Spider and the Fly, is very weighty. This one was independent reading. Kate read The Problems of Philosophy by Bertrand Russell, right? And they had to do a thesis defense analyzing the book. And so this was
largely anti-war and was arrested a number of times via his protests.
Here's another one, Sexual Politics.
This is Abigail Maletsky speaking about Kate Millett's iconic feminist novel called Sexual Politics. This book is comprised of Millett's life work in the...
All right, so when you have to produce a video that's 13 minutes long in a thesis defense, we've talked about this being like an end-of-the-year project. It's like that would spend so much time in the classroom if every student, and you have 30 students or 25 students doing a 15-minute project, that takes up, think about the class time that takes up. This takes up absolutely no class time. And these can all be posted for the students to see. They can then, view 5, 6, 7, whatever you require, and then do, an analysis or like a feedback or something. And then suddenly all that class time, it can now be used for other types of interactive things in the classroom. So this whole idea is just flipping the classroom kind of thing. All right. Number 3, here's an idea. I know math teachers are like, what can they do at home? We can't, give tests or quizzes because they'll cheat. and this happens in college. I mean, I have two daughters who are doing remote learning, and professors were still giving these types of tests. I'm like, okay, if COVID-19 has done anything, it's made us have to rethink the type of assessments we're giving, and maybe it's time to get rid of those assessments. So here's one small little thing that a math student can do. Math students could produce a video lecture, right? Rather than the math teacher giving the lecture and the kid sitting in the seat. As a math student, when I was young, I mean, I hated math class. I dreaded it, right? But if you'd made me do this, now this was not a feature back when I was in school, but if you can demonstrate how to work through a math problem, that takes a much higher level of learning. And if you can't do it, well, find out how you can do it, right? So again, it's flipping that classroom. Rather than the math teacher giving the lecture in the class and then homework, you have the kids watch that lecture at home, and then the math teacher can go through with individual students. So it's just flipping that dynamic. And I know there's a lot of resistance to this, but resistance is futile, right? It's the world is changing. We got to change with it. If you don't bend, the tree that doesn't bend in the wind is going to break, right? So number 4, teachers can produce video lectures that allow them more time to work with students in the classroom. So I have a thing called Down with Bowne, and I've been flipping the classroom for years. I mean, I have so many videos, lectures. I just cut 4 lectures yesterday on Streetcar Named Desire. So I have and these are all from my garden. So I'm just sitting outside talking about the Hollywood version and the Broadway version of Streetcar Named Desire. I'm talking about the Gothic elements. I'm talking about a defense of Blanche Dubois. I'm talking about toxic masculinity. And these are all things that the students can watch, and they can pause it. They can hear me at 1.5 speed, which speeds through the lecture. They can stop, get something to drink, and it's fantastic. And I know my daughters who are taking college classes, one is graduating as a senior, the other is a freshman going to be a sophomore. Live lectures are fine if they're live, but trying to do it live, it's so much easier if it's a recorded video, and that way students that are absent can then find it. If a student needed to watch it again, they can watch it again. And once you finish that lecture, you don't have to do it again. All right. So I can then lecture about other things from Streetcar or from Death of a Salesman or whatever we're learning. And it doesn't have to be, if you don't like your face and you don't want to be live or, recorded, you don't have to do this. You can put the webcam off and just do a voiceover. Very, very easy. And I'm using this through Screencastify. Another thing I found interesting is, and I've done this, and administrators have really liked it a lot, a teacher video at the beginning of class. So kids come in, I say, okay, I'm going to show this video. It's me, or it can be a video that you found, but use better because you're the personality, right? You're the one that's in the classroom. So if you have them watch, say, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes of a video, then you have doubled yourself. Now you can take attendance. You can pass back papers, right? You can talk privately with a student, or want to take, out into the hallway just for a little, chit chat. And then you come back, all right? It allows you to double yourself. Here's another example, you can have, 45, 50 minutes of you lecturing on a video. I wouldn't advise that because you'd have to be a really dynamic public speaker to put that off. Think of a homily in church. 10 minutes is like the max, right? So think about the students as being you, how much you could handle of that. But it gives you time to do some things, right, in the class rather than the one being in charge and being the focal. What I also found is that they actually pay attention more to a video than you live sometimes. It's ironic. And then videos that they watch at home on YouTube, you can have them take notes and then apply those notes to something like an essay in class. Okay, you watch the video about romantic elements or transcendentalism. let's read this one section from Nature from Emerson and see how you do. Now, here's an example of, let me find it. Okay, I have an example of a student, Chris, reading Emerson's Nature. I mean, he has the recording of it, and it's really, really cool. So I use students to teach other students. So here we have an example of a class reading of When Lilacs Last and Dooryard Bloomed. And what's really cool is that, when you see views like 575 people, I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, for a class production that gets that many views, which, in the big sense, it's really not that many, but it's kind of cool.
English and Language Composition class. Today we will be reading Walt Whitman's When Lilacs Last in the Dooryard Bloomed. When lilacs last in the dooryard bloomed.
So students would do this, and then I would have like a video like this, which would, do a rhetorical analysis of When Lilacs Last in the Dooryard Bloomed, which really helps with, AP and really kind of any English instruction. And as I promised, here are several. There are many more. I just wanted to. Number 6, we need to rethink how students are assessed and the meaning of assessments. We talk about this. We have all these PDPs and whatever, to talk about this. And we're teaching skills, right? If we're not teaching skills, what the heck are we doing? Because most of the information, 4 or 5%, 96% of what students learn in the classroom is forgotten after X number of years. I saw that in a study that I attended. But it's easy to hand out multiple choice tests, right? You have your test on Scarlet Letter. Who is blah, blah, blah? Is it A, B, C, D? Is it Hester? Is it Chillingworth? I mean, that's meaningless, really. It's recall. It's basic, right? It's at the bottom of Bloom's, right? But if COVID-19 has proved us anything in education, especially like tests like the ACT, SAT, AP, that the old ways of doing things could be over, right? Maybe that's a blessing for educators and scholars alike, all right? So if we're so worried about students cheating, then perhaps we're giving the wrong assessments. Because how can you cheat? Like, for instance, let's go to Sexual Politics by by Abigail. And, this is Abigail, right? It's her voice. She's the one speaking. She's the one doing the research. And this has taught her lots of things, especially about how to use technology, not just to consume it, but to use it, right? And then to make the higher level learning of synthesis on Bloom's, and this is fantastic, okay? They also had to do an APA abstract, a works cited page. Now, my scholars just don't do videos. You think, you just do videos. No, they write tons of papers, right? But that's an assessment that can't be, I don't have to worry about them cheating when they're writing an in-class essay on Mark Twain, right? Now, I do have them submit papers to turn it in for plagiarism, but again, it's skills we're learning. It's reading, writing, speaking, and technology, and to help put all these things together, okay? Some of my students have produced YouTube videos, some with over 1,000 views. They recorded poems of Whitman, essay recordings of Emerson, analysis of Emily Dickinson, like Dickinson's poetry, religion versus homosexuality. For 2 classes, I did not prescribe. These are the poems from Emily Dickinson that I want you to read, all right? We don't use a textbook in my classroom. I have them, I don't use them. It's a waste, right? They don't have them answer questions because that's boring, right? That's, again, prescription, right? I said, okay, so read as many of Emily Dickinson's poems as you can in 2 class periods, right? Give me a list of the poems that you have read, and oftentimes it was 30, 40, 50 poems. I mean, they're short. And then you find an example of a theme that you find recurring in Emily Dickinson's poetry. So a couple of students said, Mr. Bowne, purple. She uses purple a lot. I said, whoa, I never thought about that. They did some research, and it's like, oh, Mr. Bowne, it's a thing already. But I said, hey, you didn't know that. So you're finding things that, doctoral students are finding. So Rolana and Bryce here, religion, homosexuality, very, very interesting. All right. And so it's amazing what kids can come up with when you ask them to do things that may be outside their comfort level. All right. Let me go back to here. I've had, kids with children's books. Some have produced book reviews called A Book and so they had to like a book and a blank. I have a YouTube thing called A Book and a Beer. So I'm talking about this great book I just read, like Chernobyl. And then I'm like, okay, I'm pairing it with this really like amazing stout, right? So I had them do that. And then this was like, what was, wait, I'm sorry about this. That Chris here is talking about this book while also playing a Nintendo game, and he does a fantastic comparison contrast between this book and the Nintendo game, and his analysis at the end is just amazing. And he has 69 views, and this is unlisted, so it's not like this is out there in the public. So this is something that will exist. So when Chris is 30 years old, and if YouTube still exists, he can go back, and this lasts forever, right? In a way. I mean, nothing lasts forever, but you know what I mean. And this is great, right? So during COVID, I can now see Chris. I can now hear him. He's not just, out there, in his own room. Now he's to the world. And I share these with fellow students. All right. So here's Chris's, here's Julia's review, and they're a lot of fun, just a lot of fun. Again, this is independent reading. So I do hopefully, do a lot of independent reading, and that doesn't need to be just for English. It could be for any subject at all. Science teachers can have kids read science books and math books. And so it's not just, kids need to read, kids need to write, kids need to do these skills. And it shouldn't just be the purview or the domain of English, right? And so these projects last, right? These are projects that have meaning. And my last point, right? I never think I have a last point. I always have another point. But nothing will replace a teacher and a student in the classroom, right? Yoda and Skywalker together, right? Even when we are back after COVID-19, we need to rethink the relationship between how we conduct 21st century learning in a system that still resembles a classroom in the 19th century. This is not new. You've heard this before. There's so many videos. There's so much research out there that say we need to innovate. We need to change. But education is there's nothing more conservative than a teacher, because it's just, this is the way I've always done it. I want to do it this way. Imagine if your doctor still practiced medicine from 1950. You might not survive cancer. You might not survive melanoma, right? We are professionals. We need to update, change, and realize what is essential for these kids going into a workforce that is constantly changing. Innovation, right? There will be jobs in 10 years that do not exist now. Will our students have the skills to be able to meet those changes? And hopefully, if we all do our duty and, practice the best we can, and keep learning, then I think that's a great thing. So if our great-grandparents would still recognize a classroom, like think of a red one-room schoolhouse. And of course, I've been in these places, you've been in these places, and you're like, yeah, there are rows, there's a chalkboard, this is the podium. I says, okay, this is still how we're doing education. A little crazy, right? It's like things are so different. The world is so different. Why don't we update and have students excited about what they're doing, excited about reading, excited about coming to school, rather than dreading school the way I dreaded school. I hated school. And so I try to create an environment in my classroom in 605, which again is not for everyone, and so you kind of like do a lot of different things to try to get all the different learning styles in your classroom for your students. But again, I wanted to create in my environment an environment that was so different from what I was used to, and learning in those skills. We have to move education in the right direction. I hope you can join that effort. Thank you so much for viewing. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.